everyone. Welcome to Thrivecast. I'm Alan Wallner, the president and visionary of Conscious Branding. And Thrivecast is a series focused on you, your business, and your success. And with each episode, we focus on a topic to spark new thoughts and generate ideas and push the boundaries of what we know is familiar. And hopefully, as a result, we may even frame up a new mindset to ignite your business forward and inspire action. And, the thing about business is we all want to attract more customers. And one way to do that is to be different and to stand out from our competition. And interestingly enough, sometimes we think lowering your price is seen as a way to stand out, to attract more customers, or even used to close a deal sometimes. Today, we're going to take a look at why lowering your price is not a good idea, and what you can do to stand out from your competition and build your business in a healthier way. But first, I want to introduce you to our panelists. We have Dave Priddy. He's the president and founder of DK Sales Consulting. Dave has been leading coaching and training sales organizations for more than 20 years and has a passion to maximize people's talents and their potential. And Dave teaches his clients to understand why customers make decisions in less than 90 seconds. Welcome, Dave. It's good to have you here today. And then we have Scott. Oh, all right, a little delayed reaction here. And then we've got Scott Plum today. He's the professor at Minnesota Sales Institute. Scott is also known as Professor Plum, not from the game, but from the guy who hosts the podcast, What Salespeople Need to Know About Selling. And he co-hosts the weekly podcast called Get in the Door Podcast. Scott has a second book coming out this fall, or maybe it's even coming out now, so you have to check it out. It's titled Doing It for Real. Is Your Commitment Greater Than the Consequences? So Scott, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
And Ben Theis, he's the president of Skol Marketing. And Ben works with small businesses and nonprofits to get found online. And Ben has worked for Google and leverages his expertise to help companies be seen through search engine optimization, also known as SEO, and social media and search engine marketing, also known as SEM. And Ben brings a methodology focused on target audience behaviors and understanding how to motivate people to take action. So Ben, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, guys. And
I'm glad to see you all got the memo and wore white shirts today. So, we're all kind of coordinated. So,
yeah.
So that's good. It's good. So I don't know about you guys, but I find today's topic interesting because everyone is unique. Yet with our businesses, it seems as though we feel we don't have differentiation from our competition. We're always seeking it. So I always find that kind of interesting. So typically when we're looking to differentiate, the 4 P's of marketing, product, price, place, and promotion kind of come to mind. And they're kind of the first place businesses go to differentiate or stand out from their competition. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on using any or all of the 4 P's as the best means to stand out. So for instance, lowering prices can be an easy way to stand out and get more customers. But is it the best way? So with that, I'd kind of like to start it off with Ben and hear what you guys have to say about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so all 4 P's are obviously important. That's why we call them the 4 P's of marketing. So I think it's important to try to, again, apply all of them to it. But, and I think there's another kind of strategy that Alan kind of also alluded to is that there's kind of a short term and a long term. The two that I really like to kind of focus on and we focus on with our clients is kind of place and promotion. Because, again, beyond kind of price and beyond product, yes, you need to have a good product. Yes, again, price is there, but it really kind of comes down to value. And I think we all have seen potentially where maybe there's actually an inferior product that's actually promoted more, but because of where they've placed it and where they've promoted it, it actually gets more sales. So again, like when we start looking at it, I always find that place and promotion for us is really critical because hypothetically, I know no one here has a bad service or a bad product, but if you do the right promotion, which includes education, the marketing, and you place it in the right places of your marketing channel and get it in front of the right people, honestly, the price, which honestly we shouldn't be looking just to have the lowest price. We should have the best value. The product, yes, it should obviously serve a need, but again, where we really kind of start is that place and promotion, because if you can really master place and promotion, the other two really kind of fall into place from our perspective, and when we look to implement it for clients.
So what I'm hearing you say is, a lot of companies out there may really kind of hype up a particular, I don't know, maybe it's a benefit of some kind, but they may not, and get the quick sale, but maybe they don't have the best outcome in terms of what they're delivering to someone. So what they're having is a quick sale, but not necessarily the retention.
Well, correct. Yeah, like, another one of the P's that I was going to throw out there is perception. Perception's reality. But again, that's only going to get you so far. So again, that's what I'm saying. It's great to start with place and promotion because perception is going to be reality, but you obviously need to have a good product or service long-term. And that's where I think we kind of start with place and promotion to begin with, but you need to make sure that, again, your service, your product, and your price is going to sustain on a long-term basis. Obviously, everybody's business is going to be a little bit different, but yes, we start there, we build that up, but you're going to have to obviously prove yourself. And that's where kind of that product and price and how well you maintain that is definitely going to come into play. You can't really fool the marketplace, but you can get everybody in. And that's really where, in my opinion, it's to start.
Yeah. So not only is it, differentiating, but it's proving. Yeah. So that's okay. That's pretty cool. So, Scott, I'd like to kind of hear your perspective on this, a little more from the sales rather than marketing.
Yeah, and this is more of a marketing question, but I read the book, I think the 22 Immutable or 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and the rule number one is, be first in the category. And they use the example of everybody knows who's the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, and we all know it's Charles Lindbergh. And then, who was second? Well, Bert Hinkle was second. And he actually flew straighter, he flew faster, he flew more efficient. He was, in reality, might have been a better pilot than Charles Lindbergh, but Charles Lindbergh is popular. Maybe another P is popularity or position, how you position yourself in the marketplace. But like Ben said, earlier, is that people buy on value, they don't necessarily buy on price. The cheapest price sometimes can cost more, and it can create some limitations. At the same time, if you're competing on price, you're really racing to the bottom. And you look at the companies that have competed on price, and they don't last long. I used to poke fun at Ultimate Electronics. If anybody remembers when they were in the marketplace, they wanted to sell on price, and eventually they went out of business. And other companies that compete on price seem to have a very, very tight margin, and they end up sacrificing a lot of service and not offering the best value. So people want to buy on value and not necessarily price. I used another example of Costco and Sam's Club. There's a mentality of Costco where they say, how can we add something to this offering and make it unique and exclusive and offer something that our customers or our members will need, and they follow that mantra. Sam's Club will go the other direction and say, how can we shave 5 cents off the cost of this and try to cut the price in order to win the business. So you look at who's going to be competing, and the members are going to tell you, are they buying on value or are they buying on price? So I think we really need to keep that in mind. And another thing that we need to keep in mind is that how we sell as entrepreneurs or salespeople is how we buy. So how we buy is how we sell. So how we buy products and services is usually the same criteria that we assume other people follow, which is not true. I mean, it's real, but it's not true. People buy for their reasons and not ours. And the more we find out about that other person, the more we're going to know about what's going to be of most valuable to them, that's going to cause them to buy and take action, and in some cases even change. That's what I have. Thanks.
Yeah, I like that. How we buy is how we sell. I didn't realize that. So I guess I better broaden my horizons here on how I'm out there selling.
Yeah, it's our belief system. If we take 6 months to shop for something that might be $500 and we're selling something that might be $10,000, we're going to think just on our own buy cycle that that's a long sales cycle. But in reality, that may not be for some people. They might see the value quickly they might make the decision quickly and they might buy quickly, which is a lot shorter than we would assume, but we can be assumptive. That's one thing that turns prospects off in working with salespeople, is salespeople are assumptive. And if you're assumptive, you're probably creating some false perceptions, like Ben said, that are not reality for the person. You created them, and they're not real. So, yeah.
Yeah, even value. What I value may be different than what someone else's value might be around something. So really understanding different ways to create value. So maybe it's bundling different types of services or products together to create multiple offers so people can choose one of the offers.
And then it also makes it difficult to compare too. So when we want to compare on price, and you see a company like Costco where they create something that's completely different, it's tough to compare that price now because it's totally unique. I mean, the retail stores had this down when VCRs became so competitive, is they would change the model number. It's the same model, but Costco would have it, or Best Buy would have it, or Amazon would have it, or Circuit City would have it, and it would all be a different model number, or they would be exclusive. That model is only available through that retail market. Now it's difficult to compare it. So you can't do an apples to apples, and then you end up just buying on what you think it's worth instead of the price.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, Dave, I'd like to hear your perspective on this.
Well, everything they said. Plus, I had value as a big thing. When it comes to the product, it's also identifying what's the problem. What are you solving with your product, whether it be an item or whether, a lot of us are doing services. And so it's identifying, okay, what's the issue that they need to get handled, and how does that, and then that leads to the value. And a lot of times price, more often than not, you can't lower your price too much. When I first started out consulting, I talked about what a pricing, and most of the people who I got feedback says, oh, no. You can't, if you charge that, no one will buy it, because they figured if that's good a deal, you're not very good at what you do. So it's bringing out that you need to set the price that it's appropriate, but that it understands that value. Now you need to make sure that you're meeting that value. But that's sort of the idea that came from me, and the promotion, we're talking about educating your clients. And it's partly identifying who's the right person that you can help solve that problem for. And who is it that, hey, you can't help, and saying, hey, you know what? Sometimes the value that I bring is saying, you know what? I'm not what you need. Scott's got what you need. Or, it's not a sales pitch, it's a marketing. So I need to send you to Ben or to Alan. So that's identifying what it is that you're really going to provide for them, and making sure it matches up what what that need is.
Yeah, and that in of itself.
Scott sort of teed me up a little bit, because one of the things is identifying why people make buying decisions. So that's what made me choose the methodology that I use. So it's really important to understand how they make those decisions. And to Scott's point is, you need to be ready to ask some questions and be ready to active listening on that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, just being an active listener. Otherwise, you're just kind of forcing someone down a path they may not want to go. And I think a differentiation could be is how well you listen, and being truthful and honest. And you know what? I don't have the best solution, but I know someone who does, based on what I've been learning from you. I mean, that in of itself is a differentiation. It's a way to stand out, a way to build trust with people. And, they may even say, you know what? I didn't end up going to Dave, but I really like the way he conducted business, and he'll probably gladly refer you to someone else.
Well, the other thing that's also going to lead to is there's going to be more people. Ideally, I want everybody to come to me and ask me questions. Now, maybe 80% of those people I'm going to send to someone else because it's the right person. But if I'm sending 80% of 10,000 instead of 80% of 100, I could probably get a pretty good business out of that. So I had some senior reps when I first came up here who had decades with my company, and all of their customers came to them to ask questions because they knew how to get them to the right places. So that's why they dominate. That's why they were top of the food chain every single year.
Yeah, they become a trusted resource then.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Trusted resource.
Yeah. I had something one thing that Dave said is to educate your customers. And there can be, this belief or this position that salespeople or entrepreneurs need to educate their customers. And And sometimes you can educate them to a point where they're able to do it themselves, or they're able to shop your proposal and break it down. So we have to be really careful about how we educate our customers. And the mantra that I use is educate to influence, not educate to teach. So when you're educating somebody, you're educating them on the costs and consequences of inaction, which is your number one competition, it's people doing nothing. And now you're comparing a current position that they're in, and if they stay in that current position, what would happen if they don't change, or they don't evolve, or they don't look at other options as they grow? And then they're able to compare your solution to not staying where they are, and the costs and consequences could be tremendous, versus educating to influence about why they would want to make a change. So keep that in mind.
And honestly, Scott, if I could just jump in there, I think you made a fantastic point, which honestly could be even one of those key takeaways from today is when we talk about competition, I love it because I just had this conversation with another set of group of people, is that we're not just always talking about the store, again, next door, that's our quote unquote competitor. Again, you own, Ben's Auto Body Shop, and then Scott owns Scott's Auto Body Shop. Yeah, he's a competitor, but like what Scott said is you have to think about the other competitors, the people that do nothing, or like even like for us, like at Skol Marketing, a competitor really is kind of a DIY builder, like a Weebly or a Squarespace. It's not a direct, we have direct competitors here in the marketplace, but we have to also kind of look at someone doing it themselves, someone not doing anything. And I just think that's a fantastic point to kind of go at, as all these things that we're applying is, yes, we need to look at our direct competitors, but sometimes we get so tunnel vision with just focusing on them, we forget about what, again, like what Scott said, is the biggest, competitor of someone not doing anything and not looking at any of us.
Right. And a great question to ask is, besides working with me, what other options are you considering? And to do that soon in the conversation, because they're going to want to exchange information with you. So you ask them some questions, they ask you some questions, you give them some answers, they give you some answers. You get to a point where they start getting the information that they want, they're going to stop giving information to you. So now you're not going to be able to ask, besides me, what other options are you looking at? They're going, well, we're kind of looking around to see what else is out there. Now they're shutting down and they're not sharing information with you. So the sooner you ask it, the better, because it's a real chance, and then practice the active listening, to really know where are they at when it comes to making a decision. Are they, a do it yourself type of person or not?
It's even more critical in this time because there's a lot of people that are scared to death about doing anything because of all the things that are going on.
Right.
And a lot of times in situations like this, it's the greatest opportunity to take that action, and even more critical, to your point. So great point, Scott. Ben.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Okay. So beyond the 4 Ps, what other aspects of business what are some other aspects of business that can be leveraged to stand out from the competition? So I guess I will take a look at, we're going to shuffle the dice here and let's go with Scott.
Well, my first reaction is people. So salespeople, I think, make a big difference in it. And something to keep in mind is that people hate to be sold, but people love to buy. And if you think about an experience that you had purchasing something that you really enjoyed the experience, most likely there was a person involved. And I know that that's starting to minimize, and technology is starting to replace that. And we can go and do a one-click on Amazon, and we can have something show up at our doorstep, sometimes the same day or the next day. And that becomes really easy for us to make a purchase. But when we get into more complicated products or services, most likely there is a person involved, and they're working with you as a customer or prospect to solve a problem, to reach a goal, and to be able to create a very pleasant experience. And some years ago, I was remodeling my bathroom, and I went to one of those big box home improvement stores, and it was early in the morning, and I'm walking through the plumbing department, and I'm talking to one of the clerks that work there, and I say, "Excuse me, can you help me? I'm working on remodeling my bathroom, and I need some help." And he was stocking shelves, and he said, "Sure." So he came down, he spent 20, 30 minutes with me and gave me stuff that I didn't even know that I needed, that I would need. And of course, when I walked out of there, I had everything that I needed. And at the end, I said, "Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help." And he said, "No problem." And my first reaction was, "No problem." Is like, "Oh, Was I showing up? Was I a problem? I was interrupting you on stocking shelves. No problem. So I interrupted you stocking shelves, and my interruption was not a problem. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And what they really did is they discounted my gratitude and my appreciation for that experience. So often when we say no problem, we're saying that our customers were not a problem. That's not what they want to hear. Versus saying,
my pleasure.
it was my pleasure. Happy to do
Yeah.
it. That's why we're here. Come back. I'm really curious how it goes. Come back and let me know how it goes. And if there's anything that I left out, I want to make sure we get it to you. And I'm curious how thorough I was. So I'd really be grateful if you came back and told me how it went. Oh, I'd be overjoyed if it worked well. I'd be so proud to go back and say, oh, I did it. Everything it gave me was perfect. It was, oh, thank you very much. And then have that loyalty. But just to say no problem at the end really discounted the experience. But that's when you work with people, you don't know what you're going to get, but you have a tremendous opportunity to really have an impact on the experience.
Yeah, words are so important. Just being very meticulous about how you choose them and in what situations is very, very important.
It goes
another
about for a perception. Just jumping. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but again, perception. Scott, he didn't think that, or didn't think it was in the meaning, but it was perceived that way. And I just think that honestly, that's a fantastic example. I just even wrote it down because I think it's a great reminder.
Yeah, just, don't say no problem. Just say, it's my pleasure. Happy to do it. I mean, you're really appreciating somebody's gratitude that they're expressing to you. Wow, what a concept. And when we discount that appreciation, we discount them because they're telling us something emotional that they're sharing with us, and it makes a tremendous difference on that experience. I mean, it's all about experiences when you're working with a salesperson, and they love to buy. People love to buy. They hate to be sold. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, I'd like to hear what you have to say on this one.
Well, I mean, people was something that I had written down also, but that leads right into relationships. It's making sure it's the ideal company and the customer that you have, you create a relationship with, and it's a symbiotic relationship. And it's, a lot of times the focus, I think a lot of people know, like, okay, if they understand it's important to have relationships, you have relationships with the person who's making the decision, the person who's hiring you. But I think it's at least as important, if not more important, to understand all of the stakeholders. Like in sales training, I need to make sure that I create a strong relationship with the sales reps or with the team, with the sales leaders that I'm going to be working with and helping them get better at, but also up the chain to make sure, because a lot of times the people who own, the VP of sales or the CMO or the person who's up at the top of the food chain, they know what they want, but they may have not been in those shoes for a long time, so they don't understand how things have changed. And I mean, a lot of times, say sales and marketing, they're critical elements to work together, but a lot of times it's, especially in bigger companies, they're butting heads all the time. Like, oh, people don't know what to do, and they're both saying the same thing about the others because there's a lack of communication. So it's creating that relationship and creating the communication. And sometimes what I look to do is I look to be the conduit. So like, okay, so ask the people that I'm working with in the field, so what are your goals? Why are you here? Well, I want a paycheck. Okay, yeah, but why? Is it because you want to send your kid to college? Is it because you want to buy a new Harley? Is it because you want to go to Belize? Or and then also asking the person who owns the sales team is, what do you want? It's like, oh, hey, I want to make sure that I keep things going so I can sell this thing for 3 times what what it's worth now next year. Or, hey, I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it growing, and I want to make sure that so it's identifying what's important to them, and that's part of that relationship, so that you know what's important to people, and so that you can meet those needs, or if you can't, find someone who can.
Yeah, something you brought up that was quite interesting, and I remember this coming through in a conversation we had with a client many years ago. But you also know your product so well that you're up here above everyone else in your knowledge and the way you think about it and the way you talk about it. But the general person that's coming to you for business, they're down here. So you need to lower your vocabulary. You don't want to talk down to people, but you need to lower your knowledge to a point where, how were you when you first started learning about this? And take a look at some of your first time customers. Go back and remember how they were learning about you, because you don't want to talk over their head. Sometimes you might make people feel like they're inferior or not intelligent.
Yeah, I mean, because most of the people that I work with, unless they're brand spanking new, have never had sales, and but they always had sales because they were, if nothing else, they were selling mom and dad on why they could stay out an extra hour at night or something like that. But it's identifying that and then finding those examples to say, oh yeah, I had a situation just like that, and finding that commonality. So I think that's what's really important, is identifying what are the needs and what are the wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
If I could
definitely.
add on something that Dave mentioned when he talks about all the stakeholders that are involved in the decision. I think about, in my business, I have customers and I have clients. So the sales people that I work with are my customers. My client is the business owner. And I have to be able to appease both of them. I can't just appease one and not the other, because it's not going to fit. This is what I learned this concept through Jostens, who would sell yearbooks and class rings to schools. Well, who's their customer? Their customer is the student. But how do they get to the student? Through the principal. The principal is the client. So as the Jostens rep comes into the school, they have to make sure that they provide a service to the customer and the client, so that they're following through on everything that they're offering their customers, and they're not making their client, the principal, look bad or cause any problems that the principal then has to deal with. So there's clients and customers, and there's different stakeholders, and your goal is to always make your clients and customers the hero in everything that they do. I mean, people would come up to me after a class 6 months later. They go, I tried this, it worked, it was just great. Oh, thank you very much. And I said, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you had the guts and courage to apply it. You're the hero because you learned it and you applied it. And there's a lot of people that come into my class that learn a lot, but they don't have the guts and courage to apply it. They're the hero when they apply what they learn and they get a different outcome.
Yeah,
definitely.
Thanks.
All right, Ben, let's hear what you have to say around this one.
Those are some great points. To kind of go off of, again, both Dave and Scott, I think one thing that Dave was even kind of bringing up, and Alan, you were kind of even breaking it down, of being able to not talk down to your clients or customers, but also kind of being able to help them educate themselves so they can make an educated decision, is one of the big words that we always like to use internally here too, is resource. Being a resource for, again, the community, being a resource for your clients, being a resource for your customers, being a resource, again, during for a prospect. And so, again, you can do that in different ways, if that is just obviously, providing a great service there, but potentially it's, again, via education and some of the things that Dave was even kind of talking about. And I think that even gets to one of the other things that I really think that you can do to kind of separate yourself, especially kind of in today's world, and Scott even touched on this prior, is communication. I know we all know, again, communication gets thrown out, people can have degrees in it, but as even Scott said, it's applying it that actually is the key. We all can sit here and talk about it, and I know we've all had faults with drops in communication, and we probably used, again, sorry for the miscommunication, but I think that what I've really kind of found out is that, again, one of those going beyond the product, price, place, promotion, and some of the things we talked about is that, again, communication. And honestly, technology's made it easier, but it's also made it harder in a sense, because we can almost sometimes get lazy with it. And so, but there's also, because of that, and because we've seen that, again, potentially kind of widespread, there's opportunities to stand out by doing some of the things that were used to be kind of normal, maybe if it was 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I think that's another one that we can really kind of look at it. How can you communicate with your clients that would kind of separate you, again, from your, again, competition?
Yeah, that was very good. And you all are kind of alluding to another P that I think is pretty important. We should just go through the dictionary and start pulling out all the words that start with P. But personalization, I think that could be, a differentiator as well. I mean, that allows you to kind of leverage some technology to help you make it easier. But also it helps you apply kind of what Scott was saying, and really getting at some elements where you can connect with an individual, because, oh my goodness, he actually listened to me and he's actually responding with an answer to this particular type of question I had or issue I was trying to resolve. And even through, just regular communications, like sending birthday cards or bottle of champagne on an anniversary, just, throwing some things out there. But it's all these little things. It's those details that personalize your relationship with an individual.
It's that authenticity. I know we even, Scott and Dave, I know we used that word on our previous webinar, and we really kind of honed in that. And I think this is another prime example that is what that personalization does, what that communication does, what again, taking care of the client and the customer, implementing that. And all of that kind of stuff that we just got done talking about is that authenticity. And people want to, again, we all know that we're all not perfect, but, again, if we can be authentic, that is another thing that can really separate us.
And
also,
go ahead.
Also, the personalization makes it very difficult to commoditize or compare too, because now it's a unique solution that compares to nothing else. So it's customized, it's personalized. The challenge I think that we may experience is that not everybody wants to pay for the personalization or the customization, but we need to be able to set the value of that in the beginning up front so that they know that it's worth paying for. And I think people are looking for solutions, are willing to invest money in solutions that are going to be valuable to them. They just don't know who to spend the money with. And that's what they're really looking for, is the right person and the right solution.
Yeah, and yeah, because there's personalization in the product or the solution that you're delivering, but there's also personalization in the marketing and the sales approach that you're taking. So there's varying degrees of this personalization. Really cool. All right. Let's see. Okay, let's take a look at this from a different perspective, a different way. Rather than product or service attributes and benefits, can a business stand out by refocusing who their target audience is and really getting to know that customer and better articulating the benefits of working with you that aligns with that type of customer? So in other words, can you stand out or differentiate by who you believe your ideal customer is versus the product or features or benefits, and focusing on owning that audience in a particular market segment? So I know it's kind of a long question, but it's just basically kind of flipping what we're doing. And so we're going to start out with Dave on this one.
The term that comes to mind, something that I've heard, that I heard in some coaching that I just received and some training I did, was talking about who's your avatar, who's your customer avatar, really identifying what is the ideal person for you to work with, and what's their age range, what's their gender, does that make a difference, where are they located, what's the industry, what kind of market are they in, all those different things. And when I first started out, it was sort of like, hey, I can coach anybody. Well, yeah, I can, but that makes it very, very difficult for me to identify to identify where to do my marketing, but also for someone to refer to me. Well, who do you need help with? Why, anybody. You just send anybody. It's like, well, if you're asking for everybody, you get nothing. It's like I've done a lot of counseling in people who are in job transition, and you got to say, okay, who are your 2 or 3 companies that you're looking for? Because if you say, I can sell anything, it's like, well, then you're not going to get any help back at all. So it's really, the more specific you are, it focuses in, helps people to identify what specificity, easy for me to say, specificity on who you're looking for, but also what you solve, what you do. And by being that specific, there's going to be some people say, oh man, I'm not that, but I still have that issue. Would you still work with me? Says, well, okay, maybe, so it's a lot of times getting more specific, you get more people who are interested in, and because it's easier for you to describe when you know who your ideal customer is. It's also easier to describe what problem you solve, what thing you add on, how you build that up. And you can then pull out. Throughout my career, I've worked with a lot of different kinds of people in different markets, but I can pull specific examples that apply to that specific avatar.
Yeah, cool. Well, and actually, Dave, so it's so funny that you bring up the word avatar. I don't know if anyone's watched it yet, but there is a documentary on Netflix called High Score. It's a 6-part series about the history of video games. And it's kind of funny, again, because I really see the correlation here, is how they picked the word avatar and why that name has actually gone into lexicon now. Is there was a game developer at the early role-playing games where you could decide if you wanted to be the good guy or the bad guy. well, and you could burglarize the shops and stuff like that. There were no consequences. So the game developers needed to figure out something that would make you feel and know that there were consequences. And through an avatar, they picked the word, it has like kind of a demon, whatever. But really what it came down to is they picked this word and they created this whole thing called an avatar now, so that actually it wasn't you when people were perceiving it, almost like a brand, if you will. You know, our brand can be looked at as an avatar, but it makes us feel and want to do better through that avatar, through that brand. It adds a little bit of, again, personalization. It adds a kind of human component. It adds a right and wrong kind of component to it. And so I literally just got done watching this weekend. And as you're talking, whatever, I just feel like it's really kind of a cool, if you were to look at, again, your brand as an avatar, to really look at that, you want to put behind it. Yes, you're going to be the one fulfilling it. You're behind the computer screen kind of doing it, even if your business or company isn't behind a computer screen, but for this purpose of looking at that, but you're trying to instill the values and everything of your company through this avatar to have it worth something and to have it mean something.
Yeah, I like that. That's very interesting. That's kind of the essence of a brand. And so, well, and even kind of taking that further, again, how, so to answer your question, Alan, obviously is yes, again, we can definitely do so much more with personalizing it, being authentic, and really talking to that person, as Dave was kind of talking about with examples. And I always kind of talk to our clients sometimes about this. It's the coulds. We always get clients that come to me and say, well, I could market to this person, or I could market to this person. Again, you're going to start to spread yourself too thin, and you really need to be focused. And I think a lot of us have obviously heard that if you've done marketing or even sales training or anything like that. But I just think it's so important, and it's the reason it's mentioned so many times is because if you do, again, take your eye off the ball, or if you don't necessarily sometimes even pick a demographic to focus, it's kind of the jack of all trades, master of none type of thing, and so you're trying to please everybody. And so again, absolutely, I think like this question is, again, spot on something you absolutely want to do. Now, can you grow your demographic over time? Absolutely. But, again, to establish yourself, to really establish a rapport, again, absolutely picking a demographic is going to be critical, especially if you're starting a business, if you're trying to, again, grow a business, absolutely. Okay. All right,
to that point, knowing, by identifying that avatar, it helps you identify what you solve, and then you can also helps you describe how you solve it. So great points, Ben.
Yeah. So Scott, you're the person on the podium now.
Okay. I kind of looked at this question and looked at it as more of a marketing question, of course, but it's also a sales question in starting a conversation. And sometimes salespeople offer stuff for free that they want to use to start a relationship. And the challenge sometimes when they offer something for free, if it's a competitive marketplace and they don't compete well with a particular item, they end up losing money because they're offering something for free, they don't get the business. So it didn't work out really well. I had a client in the storm restoration business, and they would offer a free assessment on a roof when a storm went through and there was potential hail damage. So they would call on insurance agents and say, why don't you let us come out, we'll walk the roof and we'll find out if we've got, any hail damage and, if you should file a claim or not. Well, they'd send out the technicians, and it ended up costing about $250 to $350 of labor and time and gas and everything to walk a roof. And then when the claim came in, the insurance company didn't go with the restoration company because they ended up finding somebody to do it cheaper. But the insurance company didn't have to pay anybody to go out and walk the roof to see if there was a claim needed or not. So we ended up offering something, but not being able to sell it. Now, if we had a relationship as a storm restoration company with certain insurance agents that gave us a lot of business when there was a sump pump that failed, or water in the basement, or a tree fell on the garage or something like that, where you can end up working in that, you have a higher chance of getting that business. And then once you have that relationship established, then you offer those clients the free services that end up costing saving them money so they don't have to pay out to have it done, but you get the relationship and you get the loyalty. So salespeople offering something for free that doesn't have an increased chance of turning into a sale ends up costing the salesperson and the salesperson's company money, which is defeating the whole purpose. So we need to find out when we're offering something, what motivated somebody to call us. And that is really going to tell us what the pure audience is. I think everybody's searching for a pure audience to sell to. And I think a great question to always ask is, so I'm kind of curious, what made you decide to call us today? Today, what happened before you picked up the phone and called us? That's the motivation, and that's the problem that we solve. And why didn't you wait until last week? Or why didn't you wait until next month, to call us? What happened to create this urgency? And then that's what's going to cause people to take action. So it's really a combination of what are you offering for free, and then how are you closing somebody to the next step, not necessarily the sale, but the next step after you have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense? That I rambled?
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
So I think one thing that salespeople need to really concentrate on, and I think this is kind of a problem with some product developments, companies that develop products. They come up with a great idea. They develop a product, but we don't know what problem it solves. Oh, okay. So what would motivate somebody to buy? You go, well, it's a great idea. But what problem does it solve? And it doesn't really. So we end up pushing this product out there, and salespeople are great at being problem solvers, but they don't know how to find a problem. So they need to be a problem finder. Be a problem finder first, then apply your solution. Now you got a perfect match. And the solution sticks to a problem. Now we're creating value. But if we're going out there peddling solutions and nobody's interested in it, we're not going to be making any sales, or we come up with a product that doesn't solve a problem, we're going to be wasting a lot of time and money and energy.
It's creating differentiation without devaluing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, all right, cool. So, all right, we're going to kind of ask one more question here, and then we'll go to some of our guest questions here. So real quickly here, if we're to look up the ladder and observe a more mature business, a business that might be more mature than a smaller business, that has something special that they do that are standing out with from the competition, what company would you research and why? Or what company would you look up at and learn from and why? With that being said, I'm going to ask Ben to kind of kick us off.
Yeah, so I'm gonna first kind of start with just a bigger company, because I think that's sometimes easier, it's more well known, but I also think that sometimes even for starting a business or a small business, sometimes it gets a little tricky kind of breaking that down. Yes, we can learn some stuff from the big guys, but sometimes it's hard to relate to them for obvious reasons. But one that I've always liked is Macy's, and going back to the movie Miracle on 34th Street, where, where if they didn't have the toy, they would tell you where the toy was. And I think Scott or Dave was kind of mentioning or alluding to this previously, and I thought that it's kind of great to come full circle, but really, that type of model to be like, hey, I want to be a resource. I want to be authentic in helping you. If I can do it, awesome. If I can't, let's not just try and sell you something that is a replacement. Let's find you what you actually need to solve the problem. And if that's me, awesome. If not, let me help you find that. So I've always loved that. And that's something that we've really tried to do internally within Skol Marketing, is that. And then for a smaller company, is even locally here is Dean's Plumbing and Heating. I've always loved if you guys are familiar, I'm sure you guys have seen the billboards, the ads and stuff like that. It's a company that's been around a long time, but what I really love what they did is they recently rebranded. Instead of just having just him on the face, Dean himself on the billboards, they've kind of digitized it and they've gone modern. So they've really kind of still tried to keep that personalization of Dean there, but now they've tried to, modernize it a little bit more, and even, I would say, even elevate their brand. And so I think the important thing is looking at, when I throw out Dean, some of you guys may not even know who that is, but I think that's sometimes the important piece is look within your industry, look within your city, look within your community, and find those companies that have been there for 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years, because they're obviously obviously doing something correct. We don't always need to look at the Apples, the Googles, the, again, all the Macy's even. Yes, we can get some, but if you really want to know and compare yourself and see, look at some of the local ones, because they're obviously doing something right to get through all the things that we've been through as a society over the past 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Yeah, no, that's all a very good point. Yeah, definitely you can go local and see what's around. Scott.
Well, I mentioned this earlier. I love Costco. It's almost like a certain type of church or religion to me, but they treat their customers as members. And if you bought a tent there and you used it 3 times 3 years ago, you can take it back and they'll take it. And it's like, now I would not do that, but that's how they end up treating their members. And I'm really impressed with that. Right now, I'm in the process of looking for tires. I'm shopping for tires. And people don't go into Discount Tire unless they're in need of tires. I mean, it's not something where you browse and just see what some of the latest models are when it comes to tires. And Discount Tire does a great job of closing people. But I'm looking at Discount Tire and Costco, and I'm comparing these two businesses on buying tires. And I'm leaning towards Discount Tire because they'll fix flats for free, and they'll offer you a rotation, and they've got more locations than Costco, so they're easier to find. If you're ever out in a row, traveling around town and you need to have a tire fixed, there's probably more of those. And so those are my primary reasons, or they may come in cheaper on tires too. Well, what's a bonus? But that's not my primary reason of buying is on price. It's buying on all of the other services that go along with the experience. And a company that is able to convert an inquiry into income. So you're going into Discount Tires because if you're walking into Discount Tires, you need tires, period. And they know that. And they can be assertive at a point because they know that they've got a good chance of making a sale if they end up demonstrating all of the value that they're offering. Anybody in the market for tires? I mean, you just don't browse.
Someone just said that in the chat.
Yeah, I think you helped someone out here. That's good, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't get paid anything for Discount Tires, but that concept, is just a real simple concept for me when it comes to where am I going to go to buy tires?
Yeah. Dave, I'd like to hear your perspective on this. Who would you look up to? Or where would you?
Interesting. To Ben's point about looking, big and little. I mean, I've been a Disney fanatic forever. We go almost we're going down in December. And it's to the point where they don't have employees, they have cast members. And their cast members are required to be happy. It's, but I've got some friends who've worked for them, and it's not very hard to do that. So their expectation is no matter who you are, if you're sweeping the streets or you're the CEO, if someone comes up to you and sees your little name tag and asks you a question, you don't tell them, oh, go down there. You solve the problem for them. And so that's, I had written down, we talked about being a resource. Well, it's be the resource, the in big capital letters, bold, underline, that you solve those problems. So that's, and you can learn from the big companies, because one of the things I think that makes it so that every cast member of Disney is a very small entity, that they take the responsibility to take care of their customers. Another example, smaller, is Trader Joe's. I mean, Scott talked, they will take anything back, anytime, anywhere. If you come in and tell them, hey, I bought that steak and it just didn't taste right. Okay. Do you remember the price, or do you have your receipt? It's no questions asked. So it's, you've got to be careful with that, obviously, depending on what you do and what job you do. But it's understanding how to take care of your client, how to take care of your customer. Scott made the point that you don't want to give too much away, but you can give some value to say, hey, here's a little taste of what you get if you hire me. Here's what you really are going to see when you hire me and you're my client. And it's, I made some other comments about this, looking at this. It says you also want to kind of avoid comparisons. You don't want to say, oh, well, I've got to do it. I can't be a Disney, but I can take some of those pieces that fits me. It's also, Scott is an example of who I've looked, he's been doing this for a long time. When I first started doing this, I reached out to him, and I've reached out to other sales coaches to say, okay, how'd you do this? What are the things that you feel you've done right? What are the things that you say, hey, make sure you don't do this? And but in that comparison shopping, looking for, sometimes if Scott does something really well, it might not fit me, but there might be something that doesn't like to do that might fit me perfectly. So it's finding those, not only looking at what other companies do, small, medium, and large, but also how it applies to me and back to the ideal customer, back to my avatar. Is it something that relates to that? And is it important to make sure that I'm either doing it or not doing it? So that's the way I look at that. It's right. Identify and maybe avoid pitfalls.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's a lot of good examples out there for people to kind of take a look at, but it's dissecting it, taking a look at it. And is this something that applies to me? You don't have to do it exactly, but it should be inspirational and give you some ideas. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys, it looks like we have some ABQs out there. We have another burning question. All right. So one of them is, all right, let's talk about the difference between the motivation of a buyer for something they want as opposed to the motivation for something they resent having to buy. So that's an interesting way of taking a look at this, because there are some people looking to buy and they may want to buy, but others have to buy. And so how do you differentiate when you come into that? Because the have to buy may be looking at a lower price. So I guess with that, I'll start out with Scott.
Yeah, that's kind of the difference between salespeople selling what people want and what people need. I think of insurance as something that people need, but they don't want. So how are they going to shop for insurance? And obviously that one becomes very heavily commoditized when it just comes to the premium. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't read the policy and the insurance policy when they buy it, and they don't know what the experience is like when a claim comes in. And when you end up buying on price, there may be some things that are not covered in your policy that you didn't know of, and you've never experienced anything going bad before. And all of a sudden, your neighbor's tree falls on your house, and then you find out that your insurance company doesn't cover that for one reason or another. And now you quickly realize that you maybe should have looked at the overall policy or the company, the rep that you talk to about certain scenarios that may impact you. So it's looking at the emotional connection with both the want and the need. So when you're looking at selling something that people need but they don't want, what's the emotional connection? What's the costs and consequences if something ends up going bad on it?
So basically then what you're saying is, without ditching your competition too much, but just kind of boiling that stuff to the surface so you can help them see the difference between you and someone else.
Yeah.
And here are the things you need to take a look at when you're buying this. That goes back to that education again.
Right. And I think some of the experience that salespeople have is very helpful in creating scenarios that they've heard of in the past, or the customers that they dealt with in the past, or some of the frustrations that their customers had before they came and worked with them and bought a policy from them. And say, a lot of customers come over to us because they experienced this, and this. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but if it does, it's probably something that you may not like the way it ends. You may not like how the story ends with that. But it's a completely up to you on what you want to do. If you want to look at what we do versus that, and then you can compare, and then you can decide. That dismount of you can decide is so important when you end up offering a scenario like that. I'm going to give you some options. You're going to know more about the purchase. And then at the end, you're going to know what you want to do and what fits best for you. And then you can decide which one you want to do. And then
it's just helping them make an educated decision.
But you're also educating to influence too.
Yes.
Because you were very helpful with them and you gave them a lot of information. And it wasn't just, reading some fact card off. It was giving them information that's most influential in them making a decision.
Sure. Yeah. Ben, I'd like to hear your perspective on that question.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought Scott really kind of nailed that. He, Megan,
Yeah.
even going to touch on a couple points that I was, but I think, Megan, one of the main things is kind of going off of that is identifying, Megan, like your product or service and being realistic about it. I think that a lot of times there are times when, again, an insurance agent doesn't realize, Megan, that people don't want it, they need it, or vice versa, or whatnot. Whereas like Discount Tires, I feel like, from Scott's example, kind of realizes that, again, it's something that you kind of need, maybe don't want, or it's an immediate need. I'm not going shopping. So I think that's one of the things there before we even get into some of the stuff that honestly Scott nailed that out of the park with some of the stuff he was talking about. But I think it's even taking a step back and really kind of identifying and being realistic with yourself and with your customers and with your brand and your avatar of how are we, again, where we position ourselves, and then how to kind of attack that with a lot of things that has to be talked about in this webinar.
Sure. All right, Dave, are you able to add any additional stuff or kind of similar?
I think a lot of what Scott said, I totally agree. I mean, focusing on past experience, but I mean, I think there's still a very large degree of the sameness when it comes to with someone wants something versus what someone has to get is the why. What is it that you're looking to do? They feel, okay, I have to go and get insurance. I have to go get whatever the piece is, something to fix something. It's like, okay, so, but stepping back, say, okay, so what's the motivation? Why do you do this? What is the outcome? So like, I got to buy tires. Like, okay, why? You want to keep yourself or your family safe. You don't want your car to wreck, or you want to be able to go faster, or you want to be able to not hear the road, or, there's all, what is it that is the key elements that's going to make that decision? Sometimes it's price, and sometimes up front. For me, I would say if you're trying to choose, and that's more from a want. So like, hey, I'm not the cheapest. I am not going to be the low cost choice here. But it's looking at, okay, what's important to you, and it's you can buy your car insurance off the internet, but when you have a question, don't expect to make a phone call. You're going to have to type it in, and they'll get back to you sometime in the next 3 to 7 months. So but it's also, Scott talked about having, okay, what was the, hey, I've had clients who come over to me and they did it because of this experience. I liked it. Again, back to asking questions, and we've all three have talked about this, that, well, have you ever had to, with insurance, have you ever had to make a claim? How did that go? And if they're looking to change, it probably didn't go well. I mean, we had a house fire in my family 7-8 years ago, and there were 2 insurance agents. One, we all now will buy our insurance from them because it was the experience was unbelievable. The other one, I will never, ever, ever, and I tell everybody, don't buy from this company because they were horrendous, and they were the primary. So it's going back to that reaction to hey, what is it? What are the needs that you have? And somebody said, hey, I'm figuring I'm probably not going to use my insurance. This is just because I got to have the card when the police stop me, and go for price. Just remember that you get what you pay for, type of thing. So I think it's still back to identifying what is it, what are the key elements of getting that relationship. And again, if it's not now, if you create, to Scott's point, if you create that, hey, this is a really good relationship. I didn't buy from him this time, but boy, I'm going to make sure that I go back to him and ask him some more in the future, because I always want him to be an option, because when it is, man, I know I'm going to get the Cadillac service.
Yeah. What it boils down to is creating that additional value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we're kind of at the bottom of the hour here. So I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank our panelists for sharing their insights and wisdom.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank all the attendees who were here for this ThriveCast episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, even though we all wore white shirts. if you have any, I wasn't able to get all the questions out here from everyone. So we'll see if we can put some follow-up answers to your questions in the email that we send out to everyone. And if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to send them to info@consciousbranding.com, and we'll see what we can do about getting those answered for you. And we'll also be sending you a link to this episode with some bonus materials. So if you know of someone who may benefit from this information, by all means, please feel free to forward it to them. And if you have any ideas for any future topics you'd like to see covered, please let us know at info@consciousbranding.com. So I look forward to seeing you back. And remember, you create your world. So believe in your vision, drive it with purpose, and above all, take action. So until next time, be remarkable.